Yeah, where are you, man?
I'm north of Seattle.
Oh, okay. That's a
Yeah.
beautiful place up there. I used to live in Vancouver, so I know the Pacific
Yes.
Northwest pretty
Okay.
well.
I figured as a producer, you've probably made some trips to Vancouver at some point.
So I went to college in Vancouver.
Did
I even
you?
studied a little bit at UBC, and then we made corner office in Vancouver. So it was kind of like a homecoming for me.
I did not realize Corner Office was made in Vancouver. That's awesome.
Mm. It was so great to be back, and I'll even tell you something really cool. So I did
Yeah.
some acting courses in Vancouver at the Vancouver Film School right at the beginning, and the
Great.
principal of the Vancouver Film School, this actor Bill Marchant, or Marchant, I should say, he's in corner office. So like to
Really?
give him, yeah. So I got to give like the old head of the acting department of the Vancouver Film School, who I studied under. I got to give him a job. So I
That
was his boss now.
that's really cool. It's interesting how that comes around sometimes, but no, that's awesome. And I'm looking forward to talking a little bit about Corner Office as well. What's up, everyone? Thomas here with For Real. And as part of my coverage of Tribeca Festival, today I am talking with Oliver Ridge, who is the producer of Corner Office, which stars John Hamm and is making its world premiere at the festival. So, Oliver, I am super excited to talk with you about the film, about you, and about your career in the film industry.
Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, for sure. So, I know I mentioned Corner Office because that's the movie that I'm covering for Tribeca, but this is kind of an exciting time for you. You had another film premiere at Cannes, and that is a Cannes award-winning film now. How are you feeling about
It's
that?
it's only just started to kick in. Like it's only just started to feel real. It was so surreal for a while. I think I became allergic to champagne afterwards. I had so much of it in the south of France. But now that I'm here, like a few days later, and if or a week or so later, it's now really starting to feel like, oh, I can't believe that just happened.
That's so cool. I mean, it just there's probably you're probably staying really busy with like promoting these films and stuff, but that is such a cool credit to have now to have that award-winning film. And I don't know, it just seems like a really great time for you.
It's I think so. I have been working with a publicist, and I'm terrible at talking about myself. I think one of the reasons that's why I'm behind the camera. But she said, "Oliver, you're having a moment," and it kind of feels kind of like I am. We slave away over these films, and like we start with like super indie, shooting things guerrilla style with next to no budget, and now to be here within the same month with the Cannes premiere and the Tribeca premiere, and for our team to win the jury prize, in a certain regard, it's just crazy. Like, pinch me, Thomas. Is this really happening?
I know. Yes, big congratulations to you for the success so far, and I'm hoping that both of these films go on to continue doing great things and reaching more people. So yeah, next up is Corner Office, and I'm excited to see what that does at Tribeca.
Me
Um,
too.
yeah, so speaking of talking about you, that's what I'm going to do here. So you get to talk about yourself a little bit here. But
Okay.
I'm interested in you as a producer, right? So as far as I know, producers can wear many hats, they can do many things. That there's kind of a bunch of different ways that a producer can be involved in the film. I'm interested in knowing what that looks like for you. What does the producer role look like for you in the films that you're a part of?
It depends. I used to say it depended on the budget, right? Because any indie film, like you'll end up wearing lots of different hats.
Right.
But now that I've kind of found what it is I want to be doing in a film, I've tried to take a bit more of a creative producer role, working on development, working on casting. But every film is different. Like every film that I've got involved with, like there's some films where my company has got involved and we've just put a piece of the budget in, and I've for instance, taken the EP credit, or there's been other films like Corner Office, which have been like really hands-on. Like they've been kind of my baby in a way. There were like other producers, obviously we all worked as a team, but like being on this one in particular, like having to do that 10-day hotel quarantine in Vancouver to get into Canada, like that drove me kind of insane. I was living with one of the other producers and I thought we were going to kill each other for those 10 days. And then being there on set and really trying to navigate COVID in the best way possible. And wearing two masks and a visor. I'm not even sure John Hamm's going to recognize me when I see him on Thursday, because I don't think I actually met him without wearing two masks and a visor, even though we interacted every day. So it really varies. Like, there are things that I've come on that have been moved quite through the development cycle, that just is a small piece from me, or requires only a small amount of time. But then there could be things that you just have to nurture and be completely involved. But my favorite part of this process, which isn't normal for producers, because most producers that you meet are they're more kind of savvy businessmen, but it's the creative side that I really love. Like getting involved in projects, in development, in casting, like really being able to kind of edit the script as well and work with the directors. That's my favorite thing to do.
That's awesome. I'm sure it's very satisfying to see that work that you do on the creative side, and when you do have so much involvement in a project, when you finally see that come to fruition and see it on the big screen, like that's really cool.
It's what makes it all worthwhile. It's the finished product. Exactly right. Like when you see it on the screen.
I mean, I think about this all the time. I think with me doing this and talking with filmmakers all the time, I think a lot about like, how do films get made? There are so many components to it and so many different things that have to work and fall into place in order for that to work the right way and to get to the screen. It's just such a big process. I mean, do you ever feel overwhelmed by that?
Absolutely. Yeah. Because there's so many moving parts. There's so many people. And as a producer, I mean, like, even on the smaller stuff that I've done, I mean, it's 40, 50, 60 people freelancing every day, cast and crew. It's a lot. Everyone always says producing is problem solving too. So that's where you've got to be careful not to get overwhelmed, because there's always going to be things that are going to go wrong. It's just how you adjust and how you pivot. But it's getting better now. And I think practice makes perfect. I've certainly learned a lot from my first films, and who you work with really helps as well. Like you put a good team together, and that can really help you not feel so overwhelmed.
That's awesome. So I kind of want to talk a little bit about you as a director. So in preparing for this, I had the chance to watch the film that you directed in 2016, Bluebird, and
No way.
I did. I thought that it was a very well made film. I liked it a lot, and so it makes it, it made me wonder, like, what had you? Because I'm pretty sure if I looked at your filmography at that point, you directed that film and then you straight over to producing, right? So yeah, tell me more about that progression in your career. What caused you to move from directing over to producing?
And so the very beginning, I learned film from the ground up. In England, it's called being a floor runner. In the US, it's called being a PA, right? So it really gives you an opportunity to see film in process. And for a lot of people, that kind of breaks their dream. And they're like, oh no, I don't want to do this. You see how crazy it is on set. But when I worked as a PA, and then I started ADing in England, which isn't a creative endeavor. Like, films don't work without the assistant directors, the first AD, but it's very much scheduling and organizing. I realized that I wanted to learn a bit more of the creative side of things. So I went to acting school, and I studied acting, as you know. But when I wanted to make my first film after I left acting school, I realized I wasn't quite ready. I wanted to cut my teeth on other people's stuff. So I made a film called The Neighbor as a producer. And that was like really in the trenches as a full, like, the director called it family style. I think that's just a fancy way of saying cheap. But it was all hands on deck. And after that, I made The Bluebird, which I loved so much, enjoying that process. But I didn't feel like I was ready to start directing my own features after that. So I just started doing a little bit here, like I pick up some second unit stuff. I would do some stuff, some commercials and things like that. But really, I was producing other people's features and learning so much in that process. And I've got to take everything. So I think I'm 11 features in now. And I've got to take everything that I've learned, all the great directors that I've worked with, all the great actors that I've worked with. And now I have a clear vision of what my style is. So now going forward into directing my first feature, like that's hopefully it's going to be really good.
I hope so as well. I mean, again, if Bluebird is any indication, I think it's going to be really great. So
man, that means so much to me.
Yeah,
I'm blushing.
No, no, it's awesome, and I'm hoping that happens soon. But it sounds, I mean, you have your fingers in so many parts of the filmmaking industry, at least as far as what you're learning, right? So you're producing right now. You've done directing. It sounds like you're aspiring to do more directing in the future. You've done acting school, and so maybe you might be an actor at some point.
I I don't think so. I
Interesting.
always thought I was going to be, but I part of me doesn't feel like I can be a great actor, despite all the training and everything. But I feel like I can be a really, really good storyteller, both as a producer and as a director. And that's really what creatively turns me on the most. I just love telling stories.
Yes. And that's why I like your involvement in film so much, because stories are what makes film so worthwhile for me. I mean, I know there's a place in the world for like the blockbusters that are just kind of, CGI porn and popcorn flicks, and that there's a place for that and there's an audience for that, and we embrace that for what it is. But this is why I do film festivals. I love getting to look at films from artists and filmmakers who are very much about trying to tell a compelling story. And so that's one of the reasons why Corner Office is going to be such an interesting one to talk about. So we'll let's switch to Corner Office. Let's talk about that.
Okay.
Can you, for those who might just be hearing about the film, can you give a little synopsis about what Corner Office is about?
Corner Office is a dark comedy about a bureaucrat named Orson, who every day goes to work, works this job in this kind of 5 minutes into the future dystopian society. Everyone drives the same make, model of car. There's no color in this world. Everyone works in these tiny, cramped cubicles, and no one really knows what they do, but they do it. And one day he finds this room, and he goes inside, and inside is this big mahogany desk, these huge windows, a vinyl record player, beautiful art on the wall. And he can't understand why no one's using this empty office, this corner office. So he starts sneaking in there and doing his work in there. And they start stealing his co-workers' work and doing it in there. And he revolutionizes the whole company, but we realize this office doesn't exist. It doesn't exist on the floor prints of the building, or it's just seems to exist solely in his mind. And the film is about his fight to protect that office from his co-workers.
Yeah, it's such an interesting premise. Watching the film is so engrossing, because he's very absolute about this room. He knows this room exists, right? He just cannot convince anyone else that it's there. And there's a very fascinating idea behind that. And so having seen the final product, I can understand why this is something that you wanted to be a part of and make. But like, what originally attracted you to this particular production?
So I came onto it a little bit later than some of the other producers who've been setting it up. Anonymous Content have been putting it together, and I knew that John was going to be in it. So I got the opportunity to read the screenplay, picturing John in every scene, right? And like to work with someone like John Hamm, like I loved Mad Men, and I really enjoyed him like in other roles as well, like Baby Driver, popping up in different places. What was the Ben Affleck film that he was the cop in as well? I'm struggling to remember. The Town, where he's
Yes,
the FBI
right.
agent.
Yep.
So I've been a fan of his work for a long time. But as I was reading the script, I was like, I've never seen him in a role like this.
Right.
And our director, Joachim, is a fascinating guy. Like he won the Oscar for Best Short Film a long time ago. He's a commercials director. He actually directed one of my favorite ever commercials, a beer commercial for Amstel Light that you should look up. It's really, really good.
Awesome.
So I knew that the creative going into this was already like so good. And when I read the script, so it's based off a Swedish book called The Room. And Ted Cooper, I should say, is one of the writers from Mr. Robot. He made such an incredible and compelling screenplay that I was like, I just had to be a part of this film.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, it's a collection of such great talent. And I think that it all works together well. Like you're right, this was a really good thing to be a part of, and a really cool movie to bring to life. So congratulations on you all for working together and making that happen. In thinking about this film, when I was watching it, John Hamm's character, Orson, he's such a particular kind of character. Like he's kind of deadpan, very, like I said, resolute, kind of logical in how he thinks about everything. I liken him a lot to Spock, really. Like there's a lot of
he's got some Vulcan in him, hasn't he? For
yes,
sure. Yeah,
he does.
I'd agree with that.
But one of his quirks, I guess, is that he has a lot of office pet peeves that he narrates through his head, and then we get to listen to hear him talk about. And so I don't know what like your particular work environment is like, but I do want to know if you have any office pet peeves or workplace pet peeves that you can share. I'll start.
I get
One of my pet peeves is like going to get coffee and whoever got the last of the coffee didn't remake more. Like that's
so funny you said that. That was mine was going to be all about coffee as well.
coffee.
I think
Okay,
about
great.
my office, and it's like, okay, but they didn't remake the coffee, or they didn't clean up, or there's like just people that spill things everywhere. That was the first thing, the first thought I had. I guess it's because I spend so much of my day going to get coffee. Yeah.
Yes.
I think we're both. If we ever have an office, we will never run out of coffee.
Never. No, that could not be the case. We would just always have coffee. It would always be clean and always be arranged, right? Because coffee is very important. Like corner office brought to you by coffee, right? Like that's
yeah, exactly. Brought to you by coffee. It's like when they haven't washed the cups up or something like that. It's crazy.
That's really funny. One thing that I wanted to ask about, you had mentioned COVID earlier, and that obviously has had a massive effect on all of us and every professional industry. But I wanted to know if you see like changes in the film industry and filmmaking from like pre-COVID filmmaking to like the current state of what filmmaking looks like.
It's definitely had, I mean, it sounds stupid, but it's definitely had an impact. I mean, we're looking at indie film. I mean, 10, 15% of our budget just goes towards COVID safety, COVID testing, PPE, and that's kind of changing and adapting. But I remember with Corner Office, like we were in Vancouver where the cases were relatively low. We had to do that 10-day quarantine as I was complaining about before, although, I mean, I was happy to do it because I got to make the film.
Of course.
But when you're testing, 60 people twice a week, and you're really worried because people that don't make film don't understand that you can't just pause, right? Like the rentals, the locations, the crew, everything. It is a disaster if you shut down. And I hope and feel that because so much of this is now taking the budget, that people are being more careful with what they shoot, with what they're making, really trying to make sure that what goes on camera is the best product, because they know that to do this, actually, there's this whole other added cost to it. So I feel and hope that people are making art that's designed to be more powerful, not necessarily just making cookie cutter films. Like people are doing, like really trying to push the boundary of what they can do within the budget scope. So I do feel that that's changed. But when I was at Cannes, I was shocked by the amount of content, because there was, of course, that backlog as well, right? Because nothing really got shot in 2020. And then everything just kind of went like that. So I was shocked to see how much content is still out there. And it fills me with joy, really, the fact that even despite the pandemic, people are still making art and making good art too. Yeah,
absolutely. And, I really hope that we can continue to maintain that and continue getting great stories out there. So that's awesome. I am interested, one of my last questions I want to ask is like, as far as the future of your career, is there a project or a type of movie that you really want to work on, but haven't had the chance to yet?
You just made a Star Trek reference. Science fiction is what I want to move into next. I've made dramas, romance, comedies. I've made like a real kind of mix of genres, because a common question people ask me is, what kind of films do you make? And the answer is it's a real mix, because the filmmaker that really attracts me to a project, not necessarily the genre. But I really want to do science fiction. My directorial debut that I've been working on, that's going to be science fiction. We're developing a TV show that's a science fiction noir with a really interesting female lead. Like, I think that's my future, because I am a really big nerd. I'm not gonna lie.
I can very much appreciate that. That actually really has me excited for whatever you're working on. That's going to be so cool to see you in the sci-fi space. So telling great stories and yeah, bringing us really great entertainment. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap up here. Any last things that you want people to know about you, or maybe about Corner Office?
I think the most interesting thing about Corner Office to me is it makes you ask the question, where do we go in our own minds to protect ourselves, either from the mundane or from an attack? So as you watch Corner Office, I'd be curious to see what you would do in this situation, like what it provokes in you, in the audience. Because one of the things that really appealed to me, because I've worked jobs I didn't like. I was once a telemarketer. That was a dark time. And the places that I would go to in my own mind to distract myself from some of that. So that's something that I really hope it provokes in the audience, of that question of like, where we go to protect ourselves. But I really hope you watch it, and I really hope you like it.
Absolutely. Oliver, thank you for joining me on this interview and talking about yourself and your career and your filmmaking and your films. I'm excited for people to see Corner Office. For those watching, Corner Office has its world premiere on June 9th at Tribeca. There'll be a couple in-person screenings after that, and then I believe it'll be available on the at-home platform for New York State, if I'm not mistaken. So
Correct.
yeah, I encourage you to watch it and have conversations about it. I think it's a really good one to talk about after the credits roll. So anyway, Oliver, thank you again for joining me here, and for everyone out there watching, until next time, this is For Real.